We are delighted to have her here talking to us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Claire Fox.
I don't know if I'm standing in the right bit. Anyway, right, I'm here. Okay, listen, I'm delighted to be here in Manchester. This is my old stomping ground as a Brexit Party MEP for the North West. My election was due to many people here, and certainly not myself, and I just hope that I did your hard work justice. But for now, I'm not here as a party member. Indeed, I'm not involved in party politics at all. I'm an outsider to this conference. But I'm speaking here today. I'm also speaking at the STP conference in November, and I'm speaking at 3 different fringe events at Conservative conference over the next few days. And that's because I always appreciate being given any platform, whoever offers it, and I never take it for granted. It's always a privilege. But also because I'm keen to encourage new, smaller insurgent parties to really kick some political life and give it a real shake-up. The mainstream parties are complacent. They're protected by first past the post. But my main and key point is to realise that in order to realise Brexit's democratic promise, we need vigorous opposition parties beyond the staid technocratic likes of Keir Starmer and Ed Davey. So I wish you well. I'm here to wish you luck and to look forward to hearing more detail about the Reform UK's policies as time goes on. I've noted that Richard Tice has suggested the Reform UK is not keen on focusing on culture wars issues. I understand that. It's a very toxic environment out there. However, the culture wars and woke versus anti-woke, which can be so tiresome and trivialising, aren't really a policy area. They aren't fabricated. They've now become so internalised into every institution that it makes them hard to avoid. So just by opposing the status quo, just by speaking truth to power, that will mean that you will smack bang straight into the culture wars, whether you like it or not, even if you want to avoid them. So for example, I don't know if that's a good thing, worth clapping, but anyway, for example, you'll need free speech in order to be able to argue your case. And these days, even free speech itself, a foundational value of democracy, has been demonised and treated with suspicion. There's the chilling impact of cancel culture, and you will have heard about that from Nick Buckley. But I think that systematic public shaming and smearing of anyone who misspeaks, who fails to toe the line of a narrow prescriptive list of received opinions and fashionable causes, is more than name-calling. And it's led to people losing their jobs and their reputations. And it often leaves people isolated as colleagues desert them for fear of guilt by association. And I hope Reform UK will take it on and defeat it. Although such cancellations are often orchestrated deliberately by groups of identitarian left activists, I think a greater danger is that there's been a cultural shift. This method of cancelling people for their views is becoming the new normal in dealing with political opponents. And sadly, even if understandably, too often all sides, dare I say our side, indulge in a sort of tit-for-tat cancel culture. Look at the response to Angela Rayner saying scum. I'm not a fan of hers. I didn't like what she said. But the immediate response from people I knew was to denounce her, tell her to apologise, demand that she resigned and so on. And I don't think that's the right way to go. I've had to defend the likes of Ash Sarkar and Priya Gopal, both who I agree are hateful, often cancellers themselves, often race-bait people. Or then there's all those trolls, and God knows I have enough of them, But is the answer to try and get them cancelled, to lose their jobs, to report the trolls to Facebook and Twitter so that they're banned? I think we shouldn't indulge in vengeful attempts at giving them a taste of their own medicine. Why? Because it means sacrificing free speech just to gain a sense of schadenfreude. And it results in legitimising cancel culture as a legitimate political tactic. We should avoid mirroring the most illiberal methods of cancellers and censors. One key component of cancel culture is to delegitimise opponents by labelling them as beyond the pale. Now people routinely are branded as not just sexist but misogynist, not just racist but white supremacist, and everyone's a fascist. Or people are written off as transphobic, TERFs, Islamophobic, xenophobic, you know the score. But there's a danger of imitating this. I've heard far too many people who are supporters of the Reform UK, I'm afraid, simply just denounce people as communists, or it's a Marxist plot, or a coup, or what have you. Now, I can just tell you, as somebody who used to publish Living Marxism, that you don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, when you're throwing the insults out, it needs a bit more than a word. But just calling people snowflakes or whatever spat out as an insult, I think can be a sort of name-calling and sensationalist hyperbole that doesn't really help us at all. Because with that kind of exaggerated, wild overstatement and those kind of insults directed at politicians and policies that we disagree with, in my opinion, that's potentially bad for politics and democracy. Labelling people as a way of delegitimising their right to speak or making them seem irrelevant or beyond the pale, as often is the case in mainstream politics, can be a sign of laziness. It means that people are not prepared to win arguments, so we just dismiss opponents with derogatory labels. Think of the dehumanising epithets used about Leave voters: gammons, deplorables, low information, dumb knuckle-draggers. People's votes were written off as not counting because, it was argued, Brexit supporters were brainwashed or duped by Russian bots. But these tactics are now more widespread, and I've sadly noticed a similar approach amongst my allies in lockdown skeptic circles. Those opposed to measures such as vaccine passports, as I am, or mandated vaccines for care workers, might well be frustrated that many of these policies are more popular than we'd want. But we mustn't give up making a positive case. We mustn't resort to labelling our fellow citizens as sheeple, manipulated by controlled opposition, telling them to wake up, you fools, as though only we are the enlightened ones on our side of the debate. So I'm just saying, this approach abandons a key role that any political party needs, and that's faith in its own policies, faith in its ability to convince others, and faith in the demos, in ordinary people's capacity to change their minds and be won over. Sometimes lazy labels abdicates the hard work of engaging people and winning hearts and minds, and your job is to win hearts and minds. So in my view, however frustrating it is, lashing out is counterproductive and can fuel a climate of cynicism about democratic change and create an atmosphere of distrust in all politicians and in politics per se. Look, I'm not saying play nicey-nicey or sing kumbaya at everybody that you're opposed to. I know that politics is brutal and a battle, that you need nerves of steel and strong principles that are unwavering. But in general, my view is it's more effective and more in the spirit of democracy to be calm and nuanced, to recognise complexity and to avoid the gotcha cancel culture game. Don't get angry, get even, as they say. And to quote another cliche, a slogan I used a lot as a Brexit Party candidate, when they go low, you, as party activists, go high. And when they go lower, you go even higher. Also, I think that properly engaging with and listening to the arguments of our opponents and not cancelling their views, however reprehensible or offensive you find them, is important so that we guard against our own complacency, our own tendencies to confirmation bias. We've got to avoid creating our own rigid dogmas in a sealed-off echo chamber. Hearing and reading alternative views is an antidote to fixed orthodoxies. It's a break on blind faith in only one strategy. It stops us, as I say, being complacent. It forces us to constantly ask, am I wrong? Am I really right? We need a bit of humility in politics today, to not assume that our strongly held views are necessarily the only ones that should be listened to, the only ones that are right. Because they might need to change when evidence shows otherwise or circumstances change. In other words, I hope that Reform UK will be a party that is open-minded and flexible enough to change its mind when it needs to. It's in that spirit that in my role as a director of the Academy of Ideas, and as has already been mentioned, we organise a big Battle of Ideas festival. It's now in its 16th year, only ever once cancelled because of lockdown. The next Battle of Ideas festival is next weekend, October the 9th and the 10th in London at Church House at the heart of Westminster, and we're calling it a People's Takeover of Westminster. 75 panel discussions, 250 speakers, all views represented, beyond left and right, with more substance than woke versus anti-woke. Richard Tice is speaking on one of the panels. Reform UK has a stall. There's a special prize for Reform UK supporters, so I hope you'll come. But the key to that festival is this is not just me having an advert, is that it's a public discussion, and half the time is allocated to attendees to speak. This will be a chance to have your voice heard. Come along, speak out, get involved in the discussions, because actually the only way that you're going to change politics for good is when ordinary people are driving that change. It's no good just having leaders. We need everybody, grassroots, to have a say. So come to the Battle of Ideas. Our slogan is free speech allowed. We've also got Battle of Ideas North in Buxton on October the 30th. I'll meet you at the stall later to discuss anything here, and you can get our pamphlets, our letters on liberty, our Reclaiming Democracy pamphlet, and have a chat. Now, to finish, and I say this in all modesty, and I wish you good luck with the rest of the day in your policy deliberation. But if I may, there's one policy area of particular interest to me where I think you've been a bit soppy. I see that you were arguing for reforming the House of Lords. It is an affront to democracy to have such a huge unelected second chamber. So can I suggest that you go a step further than reform and call to abolish the House of Lords? I can assure you, I won't be offended. For once, if you cancel me as a baroness, I'd consider it a win for democracy. Good luck with that task. Thank you very much.